Erdogan sets his sights on Israel. If Trump wants to prevent another regional conflict, calling Turkey's president a friend won't cut it. Oof. 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 Look what it says here. The Turkish Republic is on the brink as Recep Tayyip Erdogan, its would-be sultan, dismantles the country's secular democracy. President Donald Trump has seemingly taken little notice. Yes, because the Americans don't give a damn. They don't care. They need this country. Principle is only used if it's to the advantage of the power. If it is not to the advantage of the power, then principle goes out the window. It's all Machiavellianism. Politics is Machiavellian. It says here that soon, though, Trump will have no choice but to pay attention. Pay attention to what? To Turkey. While Erdogan consolidates power at home and prepares to project it. Ugh, God have mercy, I hate this. While Erdogan consolidates power at home and prepares to project it abroad, he has set the stage for a clash with Israel. Indeed, Turkey has quickly emerged as perhaps the greatest danger to the Jewish state in the Middle East. It's not Iran. It's the second most armed country in NATO. And was Israel retarded, or was it just so demonically influenced that it couldn't see straight when Israel said, we got to throw Assad out? I mean, really, you wanted Assad gone, and you enabled the second most armed country in NATO, which hates you on top of that, to be right next door. Either Israel is retarded and the whole Jewish IQ thing is bullshit, or they're so demonically influenced that they can't see straight in front of them. They're so fogged by demonic influence. Turkey has quickly emerged as perhaps the greatest danger to the Jewish state in the Middle East, escalating the threat of a conflict he won't be able to avoid. By he, he's talking about Donald Trump. So it says here, Erdogan seems poised to use his growing power in service of imperialist aims. He has fused Turkish nationalism and Islamism with a renewed reverence for the Ottoman Empire. Isn't that what I was saying? That's why I got this article. Isn't that what I was saying? I said it's going to be an amalgamation between Turkish nationalism and Islamism, just like the Young Turks in World War I. And I have to disagree with this part of the article, because it says here that this is reversing the course that Kemal Ataturk did. No, it's not. It's not reversing Kemal Ataturk. Yes, Kemal Ataturk was secular, but so were the Young Turks who ruled over the Ottoman Empire during World War I. They were secular, but nonetheless, they used Muslims to do their dirty work. Just like Kemal Ataturk, when he went to war with the Greeks, he allowed for his men to rape and destroy and burn Smyrna at the end of the Turkish-Greek War in the 1920s. He didn't care. So right there, even with Ataturk, you had nationalism and Islamism working together. It's all the same demon. All this is the same demon. And it says here, what drives Erdogan is a kind of neo-Ottoman dream, starring himself in the role of Sultan cum Caliph, or as he once put it, a servant of Sharia. The truth is that many Turks, even secular ones, now this is interesting. This is very true. I have to agree with the author on this one, 100%. It says here that the truth is that many Turks, even secular ones, have a certain affection for their country's imperialist past, when Turks were feared invaders rather than migrants searching for industrial jobs. So this is what I kept trying to tell you people. It doesn't matter if secularists take over with CHP. Doesn't matter if Erdogan, the Islamists, are in power. It will be evil. And the expansionistic aspirations of Turkey will be there even if the secularists who speak of democracy take over. It doesn't matter. And if you don't think it doesn't matter, tell that to the Armenians. Oh, you can't because they're dead. Because during World War I, the Young Turks were in power, and they did the greatest genocide of the Armenians in the history of the Armenian race. And who were the Young Turks? Secular nationalists. So it doesn't matter. Erdogan's grand designs appear to include establishing himself as the Muslim world's principal champion of anti-Zionism. Yes, this article, man. The Atlantic, they really put out good stuff. This article, they're hitting all the right notes. That's correct. He wants to make himself as the enemy of Israel. I will destroy Israel. I will be the enemy of Zionism. I will save the Palestinians. And after Erdogan is gone, whoever takes his place is gonna say the same damn thing. He's gonna utilize the same rhetoric, the same thing. He's gonna say, we're gonna save the Palestinians. And so Turkey now places itself as the main, as the enemy of Israel. And so the Israelis are butchering Palestinians. The Muslim world is asking for what? A hero. In comes Turkey. In comes Turkey. And Israel was so damn foolish, just like Judas, just like Haman before them. Israel was so damn foolish to think that it was a great idea to overthrow Assad. And that has now led to Turkey, as the article says, setting its sights on Israel. Just as Haman had a noose for Mordecai, Israel had a noose. Israel has a noose for the Palestinians. Israel will be caught in its own noose. Because the Israelis are going to continue to butcher the Palestinians. And they're going to try to do a final solution policy on the Palestinians. And the Turks will say, we're the saviors, not you. Just like Hitler propped it himself up as the hero of the European people against the Bolsheviks. And the Bolsheviks were mass murderers. They butchered people. They did atrocities. And Hitler said, I'm the hero against Bolshevism. What is Turkey doing? I'm the hero against Zionism. History doesn't exactly repeat, but it does rhyme. It does rhyme. Late last month, in Turkey's largest mosque, Erdogan reportedly told a crowd of worshippers, "May Allah, for the sake of his name, Al-Qahhar, the Vanquisher, destroy and devastate Israel." He's talking about himself. He wants to destroy Israel. He wants to do it. In turning against Israel and in favor of Hamas, Erdogan is riding a wave of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism that has been rising in Turkey since at least the 1980s. Check this out. I thought it was very interesting that the article pointed this out, especially on the secular left. Wait. I thought that if secularists take over Turkey, Israel will have a friend. Israel will have a friend if the secularists take over. What does this article say? It says here that Erdogan is riding a wave of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism that has been rising in Turkey, especially on the secular left. So even if you have secularists take over Turkey, Israel's still fucked. No matter how you look at it, it really is the story of Haman. Haman said, I got a noose. God said, okay, you built your own noose. Israel says, I got a noose for the Palestinians. The path that you're taking is like Haman, and I'm not saying it's good. I think what's going to happen to Israel is very sad, and I don't want it to happen. I don't. But the problem is the recklessness of the fanatics who are running Israel are leading to the demise of their own country. That's the thing. That's the thing. So it says here that the Turkish president has intensified a long-held desire in his country to gain greater distance from the United States. Ooh, this article, man, it hits all the right buttons for me. I mean, that's why I picked it. I was reading through it. I was like, oh, this is good. Oh, this is interesting. Very interesting. So it says here that Turkish president has intensified a long-held desire in his country to gain greater distance from the U.S. and NATO. Turkey wants independence from American power. That's why it's forming its own military-industrial complex. That's why it formed its own drone. That's why by the end of this decade, Turkey's going to have its own tank and its own fighter jet in operation. It's going to have the Altay tank and the Khan fighter jet in operation by the end of this decade. It wants to be free. It wants to create its own empire. And what is this? What is this but the sign of this current war between nationalism and globalism, right? We have this post-World War II globalist order that we have become so accustomed to. And there has been a war launched against the global order. It's being launched by the right wing. It's being launched by nationalists. It's being launched by technocratic folks like Elon Musk. I almost said Elden Ring, but they're all fighting to become Elden Lord. And so they want to see the end of the global order, not because they hate globalism, but because they want to establish a new globalism. They want to establish an alliance of nationalistic countries. And Turkey is riding this wave of anti-globalism to establish Turkey as an independent country, as a superpower, independent of America's and NATO's control. Germany wants to do the same thing. They are pursuing it. That's why they're pursuing their own military power. Because they want to become militarily independent. That's why I say Turkish militarism, German militarism, it's going to happen. And every year, it just gets clearer and clearer that my suspicions, which I have been declaring since 2016, have been correct. So it says here, now that Erdogan has spurned the West and set his sights on Israel, Turkey could prove more worrisome for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu than virtually any other country. So they're talking about Iran, Hezbollah, they're talking about Hamas, the Houthis, it's nothing. Iran is a serious problem, but the other ones are not. But Turkey is the biggest problem. And it says here that Turkey's armed forces are large, well-equipped, relatively well-trained, and backed by a GDP of more than $1 trillion. A recent Israeli security assessment, the Najal Commission report, identified Turkey as a growing threat given its military presence in neighboring Syria and its imperialist ambitions in the region. To discern Erdogan's next steps, look to Syria, where he could begin to mobilize against Israel. Erdogan has ample leverage there because of his support via cash, arms, and intelligence for the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham militia. The Israelis are concerned that with Turkish proctoring and aid, HTS could eventually become a formidable military force capable of replicating the cross-border threat Hezbollah. But that's not really what we're focusing on here, because even if HTS does become just like Hezbollah, Israel defeated Hezbollah, which means that Israel could easily defeat HTS. It's not HTS that Israel is worried about. It's Turkey. Israel is not worried about a paramilitary terrorist group. Israel is worried about the second most armed country in NATO. That's the bottom line. Even worse for Israel is the scenario that Ankara establishes an air and naval presence in bases across Syria, blah, blah, blah. For now, though, the likeliest course of action for the Turkish president is to find small-scale ways to support attacks on Israel, etc., etc. So the writing is on the wall. The train has been set. The ships are sailing. And it's not looking good for Israel. Israel is a small country. If Turkey attacks, there is nowhere to flee. Exactly. That's right. There's nowhere to flee. That's why if you're living in Israel right now, you should leave. I would leave. Pretty scary. Absolutely. Yeah. Like I've said in the past, and I don't say this in a good way. I don't say this as a positive thing. I say this as a very sad reality. Israel will become a giant Auschwitz. It'll be transformed into a giant concentration camp where no one can leave. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying that's a very bad thing. I'm just warning people about this for the future. Yeah, morals and politics is purely justification. Nothing else. That's right. Yeah, if morals are to your favor, then you use morals. If morals are not to your favor, then you just say it's advantageous for us, and that's it. The fanatic Jews will stay in Israel and fight. The smart ones will flee. Yeah. Imamoglu is evil. He is. Well, I really don't know the guy personally, but his ideology of Kemalism is evil. The 70s were a time of war. Turkey took over Cyprus, and English won the conflict over the Falkland Islands. Malvinas with Argentina. The Soviet Union fought the Taliban in Afghanistan. Yeah, but those wars weren't really major wars. They weren't existential wars. There was a revolution in Iran. Yeah, it's very much like what was going on in the early 2000s. You had all these non-eventful wars that really meant nothing and were, for the most part, unnecessary. Afghanistan, Iraq. And then you had that whole thing in the Balkans in the 1990s, which was another bad thing. And then the United States armed the Mujahideen that led to the rise of terrorism, and that led to the war on terror, which everybody hates.